Okay, we're going to start moving into parallel lines in the transversal. We're going to have two parallel lines, and I'm going to identify their parallel by either one arrow. You guys can see my arrow here. So I'm saying those two lines are parallel. You guys can see in question number 2, I could use 2 arrows instead. I'm going to use the same amount of arrows to identify which 2 lines are parallel. The other line, the one that crosses them, we're going to call it transversal. So we're going to start looking at 2 parallel lines with a transversal. Now, the first thing we're going to be learning is when in one corner, when 2 angles are opposite from each other, so we can see that I'm looking at this angle and this other angle. I'm in the same corner. When there are 2 angles that are opposite from each other, we're going to call that vertical angle. Vertical angle theorem says that 2 angles are going to be identical. They're going to be measuring the same thing. The instructions are solve for x. So the way I'm going to solve for x for vertical angle theorem, I'm just going to let the 2 angles equal each other. So I'm just going to say that 6x plus 2 is equal to 5x plus 10. I'm going to let the 2 angles equal each other. I'm going to separate my sides through the equal sign. I see I have x's on both sides. Personally, I move the smallest x. So I'm going to move the 5x from the right. I'm going to move it to the left as a minus 5x. I'm going to be using opposite sides. So my goal right now is move the x's to one side, and those that don't have an x, move it to the other side. I'm going to have x's on the left side. So the plus 2, let me move it to the right side as a minus 2. Once again, I'm moving terms, but once I move it from one side of the equal sign to the other side, I'm going to switch signs. All right, so on the left, I have 6x minus 5x. 6 minus 5 is 1x. On the right side, I have 10 minus 2. That gives me 8. So the value of x is equal to 8. Now, when you type this, don't type in x equals 8. Just type in 8. So for the homework, just type in the number, just 8. All right, let's take a look at question number 2. I notice that these 2 angles are on the same corner, but they're opposite from each other. Therefore, this is vertical angle theorem again. So I'm just going to say that 19x plus 1 is equal to 18x plus 7. I'm going to let my 2 angles equal each other. I'm going to separate them to the equal sign. I see x's on both sides, so I'm going to move the smallest x. I'm going to move it to the left. Don't forget to switch the sign. The plus 1, I'm going to move it to the right. Don't forget to switch the sign. So on the left, I have 19 minus 18. I know that's 1. So that's 1x. 7 minus 1, that gives me 6. So x is equal to 6. Once again, on the homework, just type in 6. Don't type in x equals, just 6. So that's vertical angle theorem. Another rule we're going to learn is, what if the 2 angles are on the same corner, but they're not opposite from each other? I know I called this already. When we were dealing with adjacent, I called this linear paired, and I also call them supplementary. I know I covered this a few weeks before. Now, when this happens, when they're on the same corner and they're next to each other, they're not opposite, they're next to each other, we're going to add them up and we're going to equal to 180. So I'm just going to say negative 4 plus 26x plus 80. So I'm adding both angles. In this case, is equal to 180. Right, we call this linear pair because it's a pair of angles, basically 2. It's a pair of angles that is the angle of a line. They're on the same side of a line. Okay, so let me separate my sides for the equal sign. The left side I can simplify a little. I see a minus 4 and a plus 80. I can simplify that. So looking at xy, I see 26x. I don't know. So here I had a plus 80. Now, negative 4 plus 80, that gives me 76. This is equal to 180. I just combined like terms. I simplified as much as I could on the left side. Now, I see x is on the left side only, so I'm going to move the 76. I'm going to move it to the right as a negative 76. So I had that 26x is equal to 104. Right? 180 minus 76 give me 104. There's a number other than 1 in front of the x. I see a 26 in front of the x. So in this case, let me divide by 26. So I have that x is equal to 100 divided by 26 is 4. So x equals 4. Once again, on the homework, just type in 4. Lastly, let's take a look at question number 4. That little box at the bottom that basically represents 90. I'm going to write the number. That represents 90. So those two angles, in this case, are on the same side of a line. So I'm going to call them linear paired. According to linear paired, I must add the two angles. So let me just go 10x plus 10 plus 90. And they're going to equal to 180. Let me separate the sides through the equal sign. The left side I can combine a little. When it comes to letters, I have 10x. But then 10 plus 90, let me call that 100. And this is equal to 180. So I have 10x plus 100 equals 180. I want to have the x by itself, so the 100, let me move it over as a minus 100. Don't forget to use opposite signs. So here I have the 10x is equal to 80. Let me divide both sides by 10 because it's the number in front of the x. So I have that x is equal to 8. So that's vertical angle theorem in linear pair.